In 1970, one engineer built a home amplifier so powerful it could set your speakers on fire. 350 watts per channel when most living rooms ran on 30. That machine kicked off a war. For 8 years, Pioneer, Marantz, Sansui, and McIntosh fought over one number: watts. They built monsters heavier than bags of cement that pulled more electricity than a space heater. Here are 7 of them, and half came from names you have never heard of. To understand why these machines exist, you have to understand the moment. By the mid-1970s, transistors had shoved tubes out of the living room. Stereo had gone fully mainstream, and every major brand wanted to prove it made the biggest, meanest unit on the shelf. More watts meant more power. More power meant more bragging rights. People ate it up. Here is the absurd part. A normal person in a normal room with normal speakers needs maybe 20 or 30 clean watts to get comfortably loud. 50 was already overkill. So when companies started shipping 200, 300, 350 watts per channel, they were not solving a problem anybody actually had. They were flexing. Then the Federal Trade Commission stepped in. In 1974, it forced every manufacturer to state continuous power with both channels driven across the full range of human hearing at a stated level of distortion after a full hour of warm-up. Once everyone had to tell the truth, the only way to win was to actually be more powerful. The marketing trickery was dead. The engineering took over, and that forced honesty produced the 7 machines we are about to count down. Some you will recognize, several you almost certainly will not. Number 7, the Technics SA-1000. On pure specs, this should be the king of the entire receiver war. 330 watts per channel, roughly 90 pounds of chassis, and it hit shelves a full year before Pioneer dropped its famous flagship. On paper, Technics had the bigger number, the bigger frame, and the earlier claim. And almost nobody talks about it. Pioneer's SX1980 walked in with better looks, a better story, and a mystique that Technics never managed to build. So the machine with the stronger spec sheet got buried by the machine with the stronger legend. And that is the watchdog lesson sitting right at the bottom of this list. Specs alone do not build legends. Reputation and storytelling do. That is exactly how modern audio marketing works on you today. The brand with the best narrative takes your money, not necessarily the brand with the best parts. Number 6, the Sansui BA-5000. Collectors call it the battle tank, and the second you see one in person, you understand why. 108 pounds of amplifier in a burgundy chassis with 2 enormous power meters glowing on the front. That is not a typo. One amplifier, more than 100 pounds, and most of that weight is raw transformer and heatsink. Under the hood, it makes 300 watts per channel into 8 ohms and a full 600 if you bridge it to mono. But the headline number is not really the story here. What made the BA-5000 strange, even for its era, was that Sansui built it with an output transformer inside a solid-state amp. Almost nobody else was doing that. Sansui kept theirs on purpose, because it did 2 clever things. It kept your speakers stable no matter how weird their impedance got, and it filtered off the deep subsonic garbage that can rip a woofer apart. This monster was engineered to hit incredibly hard while quietly protecting the very speakers it was trying to destroy. And there is a reason Sansui was the one clinging to transformers. The company was founded in 1947 in Tokyo, not as a stereo brand, but as a transformer manufacturer. While everyone else chased the newest transistor tricks, Sansui leaned on the one thing they had understood better than anyone for decades. Number 5, the Marantz Model 500. If the Sansui was a battle tank, this was a Formula One car. Fast, gorgeous, and always one bad day away from blowing itself to pieces. Marantz released it around 1972, and it made 250 watts per channel from a design that was, for the time, almost show-off complicated. Marantz did not just buy off-the-shelf parts and bolt them together. They partnered with Motorola to develop custom power transistors built specifically for this amplifier. They ran the entire signal path fully push-pull from input to output, something engineers of the day described as a world first. And they applied their negative feedback twice, once from the preamp stage and again from the output, squeezing distortion down to almost nothing at both whisper volume and full tilt. Marantz was not chasing a spec sheet win. They were chasing perfection, and you could hear it. Owners describe a big, muscular, brutally detailed sound, the kind of amplifier that made the expensive Japanese receivers of the day feel a little polite by comparison. So why is it only number 5? Because owning one was a test of your patience and your bank account. One longtime owner called his unit phenomenally unreliable and said it was so complex that repairing it was a genuine ordeal. Only 3 ever made it into all of Australia, and every single one was a headache. Here is the watchdog lesson buried inside that beautiful machine. In the Watt Wars, chasing the bleeding edge always came with a cost, and that cost usually landed on whoever owned the thing 40 years later. Number 4. The Sansui G-33000. If the others on this list are legends, this one is closer to a myth that people swear they once saw. 300 watts per channel, sitting at the absolute peak of Sansui's super receiver line, and it was so large, so heavy, and so expensive when new that very few human beings ever actually owned one. Fewer still survive today in working condition. The faceplate stretches dramatically wide. The dial lighting glows like the cockpit of a jet at night. And when one of these surfaces for sale, prices climb fast and bidding turns serious. Collectors treat the listing the way art dealers treat a lost canvas suddenly turning up at auction. Here is the part the watchdog in me cannot let go of. The G-33000 was never a practical purchase, not even in its own time. It was a company flexing every ounce of engineering muscle just to prove it could. Nobody builds like this anymore because nobody can justify it on a spreadsheet. And that says everything about what we have lost. Number 3. The Pioneer SX1980. I have to be straight with you because this is a watchdog channel. The SX1980 is technically a receiver, not a bare power amplifier. But the amplifier section hiding inside this thing is an absolute monster, and it is the machine that turned the Watt Wars into a spectator sport. Pioneer dropped it in 1978. 270 watts per channel, 78 pounds, a massive donut-shaped transformer flanked by capacitors the size of soda cans. And then something delicious happened. A reviewer named Leonard Feldman put it on a test bench for Audio magazine and discovered that Pioneer had actually undersold it. Under dynamic bursts, the way real music actually behaves, this receiver was slamming out close to 460 watts. Pioneer had sandbagged their own monster. Distortion sat at 0.03%, a figure a lot of modern gear still cannot casually beat. It sold for just under $1,300 in 1978. Adjust that for inflation, and you are north of $6,000 today. A clean, fully serviced example now routinely sells for $8,000 to $12,000, and museum-grade units go higher. People are paying luxury watch money for a 1970s stereo receiver. But here is the honest caveat most videos skip. On paper, Pioneer was not even winning. Technics had already beaten it on specs a year earlier. Marantz matched it at 300. But the SX1980 had the looks, the reputation, and the mystique. And in vintage audio, the legend and the spec sheet do not always agree. The legend is usually the one that empties your bank account. Number 2. The McIntosh MC2300. If the others on this list are monsters, this is the one built like a bank vault. McIntosh made it from 1971 all the way to 1980. Black glass front panel, those unmistakable glowing blue meters, and a weight of 128 pounds that basically requires 2 people and a good back to move. 300 watts per channel into 8 ohms, 600 bridge to mono. And that rating was famously conservative. Independent labs usually measured even more clean power than the badge promised. It carried a protection system McIntosh called Sentry Monitoring, which watched the output transistors and shut everything down before they could cook themselves. This was the opposite of the flame linear philosophy. Overkill built with a seatbelt. Inside, the MC2300 used output autoformers, McIntosh's signature trick. Full rated power into practically any speaker impedance without losing a thing. Most amplifiers sag into a tough load. This one simply did not care. But the story that made it a legend happened in 1974. The Grateful Dead wanted the best-sounding concert system on Earth, so they built a towering wall of speaker cabinets and powered it with 48 McIntosh MC2300s. Nearly 29,000 watts of clean power throwing intelligible sound 600 feet across an open field. Not distorted noise. Clean vocals and bass at the length of 2 football fields. Jerry Garcia's personal MC2300, nicknamed the Budman after a Budweiser sticker on the front, sold at auction for $378,000. One amplifier, the price of a house. Number 1. The Phase Linear 700. This is the amplifier that started the entire watt wars and the most gloriously reckless machine on this list. In 1970, a young engineer named Bob Carver and his partner Steve Johnston decided to build a home amplifier with 350 watts per channel and sell it at roughly $1 per watt. The amp landed at around $749. The high-end brands charged double or more. Carver blew the doors off the entire pricing model overnight, and the biggest names in rock noticed. At the famous McIntosh listening clinics in 1970 and 71, the upstart Phase Linear reportedly outmuscled everything in the room, including McIntosh itself. Pink Floyd used banks of modified Phase Linears on tour. Aerosmith, Black Sabbath, the Grateful Dead, all of them leaned on Carver's cheap Savage watts to fill arenas because nothing else gave you that much clean power for that little cash. But there was a catch. To hit that price, corners got cut. The protection circuitry was thin, and the heat sinking was not enough. When a channel failed, it could send roughly 100 volts of raw DC straight into your speakers. And 100 volts of DC into a speaker coil does exactly what you would expect. It burns. Owners started calling it the flame linear because a dying Phase Linear could genuinely torch the very speakers it was hooked up to. Carver eventually fixed it. The 700B in Series 2 tamed the flames while keeping the punch. But here is the part of the story almost everybody skips. Before Bob Carver, big clean power was a rich person's toy. After him, a working musician or a college kid could suddenly afford to shake the walls. The entire industry had to scramble to keep up. If the watt wars had a single spark that lit the fire, this was it. And in this case, I mean that almost literally. The watt wars were a marketing arms race, companies flexing over one number. And yet, in the middle of all that overkill, they accidentally built the toughest audio equipment ever made. Machines that outlive their makers and now cost more than the cars in your driveway.